Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We'll begin with a new development in a lengthy battle. The city of Surrey says it's filing a petition in BC Supreme Court challenging the province's order to transition away from the RCMP to a municipal police force. Peter German, a lawyer and former RCMP deputy commissioner, has been retained by the city to help with the court battle. And as always, Brian Minter will be here to answer all your gardening questions. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. The City of Surrey says it's filing a petition in BC Supreme Court challenging the province's order to transition away from the RCMP to a municipal police force. Mayor Brenda Locke is arguing the transition would cause an unacceptable tax increase at a time when Surrey residents are struggling to pay the bills. Peter German is the city's policing advisor. He took questions from reporters in the past hour, and this clip begins with a discussion about why the city took this action now.
Well, it should come as no surprise. The council has been very clear. The majority of council was elected on this issue. They're very concerned about the cost to Surrey taxpayers if this transition were to continue. And it's also very clear that the Surrey Police Board has been unable to hire enough frontline officers to assume police force of jurisdiction.
You are an expert when it comes to policing. You're a lawyer. Also, the Police Act, as far as you're concerned, does it not authorize the minister to choose the model of policing for a municipality?
Again, that's really getting into the issue before the courts. So I'm not going to comment on that, and I don't profess to be an expert on the Police Act. That's why we have very competent lawyers dealing with this issue.
How much is this legal action going to cost approximately?
The cost of the legal action will pale by comparison to the cost of this transition if it were to continue.
What do you expect it to cost?
The city estimates that the current cost of having two police forces is somewhere in the area of $53 million per year. If the transition were to continue, those costs actually escalate. And if you take a look at the petition, page 9, these figures are there for you. The estimate is somewhere in the area of $460 million over 10 years.
But the litigation itself?
Oh, I have no idea what the litigation costs are.
Can you describe your role, your status in this, and how much you're being paid for this?
Right, so I was engaged by the City of Surrey in the fall to assist with preparing their plan, which was submitted to the province. And I've worked with them sporadically, really, since then, depending on what issues arose. And council last evening asked me to appear here today and speak to the matter.
So how much are you getting paid for this?
Well, my retainer is a matter of public record, and I'm sure you can get that from the City of Surrey.
Peter German speaking in the last hour. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth is calling that announcement from the City of Surrey extremely disappointing. In a statement, he says, people in Surrey want the uncertainty over who will police their city to end. They want this debate to be over. They want government money spent on protecting their communities instead of on legal fees. He adds, people's safety in Surrey and across the province is non-negotiable. Minister Farnworth says he would be introducing legislation on the matter on Monday. In July, the BC government used its powers to order the city to continue the transition to the new Surrey Police Service, the SPF. That move effectively forced Surrey City Council to reverse its earlier decision to stick with the RCMP. Turning to international news now, tomorrow marks 1 week since the deadly attacks in Israel by Hamas. Over 1,300 Israelis have died and thousands more have been wounded by rocket attacks and raids. Jewish communities in Israel and across the globe are mourning the losses. And here in Canada, the RCMP say they are aware of online threats to Jewish communities in this country. Vancouver police said Thursday they've been in contact with federal and provincial public safety and counterterrorism officials. And Jewish community leaders have been speaking out about the fear and trauma people are feeling after this last week. Tanya DeMaio is CEO of Jewish Family Services Vancouver. She spoke with CBC's Stephen Quinn on the Early Edition this morning.
One of the big things that really we recognized is that a lot of people, especially those who are Israeli, are looking for Israeli-speaking therapists and counselors, which is absolutely, again, something to understand because that's what they feel as a safe space. So that's what we are trying to identify right now, to work with the Hebrew-speaking therapists who can support the community. We've also opened up a number of group sessions, individual sessions, opened up a line so people can receive the urgent support and not be on the wait list and wait for therapy. You know, this now goes beyond that regular type of support that we are used to, because as I said, we see community members who haven't reached ever before.
Tanya DeMaio with the Jewish Family Services Vancouver speaking with CBC's Stephen Quinn on the Early Edition this morning. Meanwhile, civilians in Gaza are on the move today. They're heading south away from a looming Israeli ground assault on the densely populated territory. Israel is warning residents in the north to leave within an hour. Those are sounds from Gaza City, where civilians are fleeing. More than 1 million people live in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is urging people to ignore the warning, calling it Israeli propaganda. Humanitarian groups inside and outside Gaza say an evacuation of that scale in such a short amount of time is impossible. The United Nations is urging Israel to withdraw the evacuation order in Gaza. It says the consequences will be devastating. Thousands of people injured by Israeli airstrikes are receiving treatment in northern Gaza hospitals and are unable to leave. The World Health Organization is also pleading for a reversal of the order. Here is WHO spokesperson Tara Jesarevich on the situation.
These severely ill people whose injuries mean their only chances of survival is being on a life support such as mechanical ventilators. So moving those people is a death sentence. Time is running out to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. If fuel, water, food and life-saving health and humanitarian supplies cannot be urgently delivered to the Gaza Strip amidst the complete blockade.
The area in northern Gaza under the evacuation call include Gaza City, which is one of the most densely populated places in the Middle East. The United Nations is urging Israel to rescind its order. It warns that a mass evacuation of that area will have devastating humanitarian consequences. Much more on this story throughout the day on CBC Radio 1, on cbc.ca/news, and on your CBC News app. Grade 4 and 7 students across the province are being asked to take the Foundational Skills Assessment Test. Now, this is a test that the BC government says can give them information on which schools need more support. But teachers' associations are pushing back, saying the test puts unnecessary stress on students and teachers alike, and that the province should be focusing on other, more pressing needs in the school system. So we're asking you, what do you think of the Foundational Skills Assessment Test? How should the province be evaluating student performances? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Here to tell us more is Lizanne Foster. She's the Vice President of the Surrey Teachers Association. Hello, Lizanne.
Hello, Michelle. It is Michelle, right?
Oh, it's
Today.
Amy today.
Oh,
Michelle did
Amy,
have to
sorry.
take the day off.
I'm sorry.
That's
It's
okay.
been
So, I've had children go through these tests. It's been going on for quite some time, and the Surrey School District is the largest in the province. So, tell us more about your association's view on the tests.
Well, I'll just tell you about our experience for the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Every day, I've been fielding phone calls from parents who are absolutely dismayed that their request to have their child opt out of the test because they agree with us that the test is unnecessary, it is stressful, it is of no benefit to the child writing the test. They agree with that and they want the child to withdraw from the test, and they're getting a lot of pushback from principals. And we think that pushback is coming from senior management. I had a phone call from a parent just the other day, and he said, when my oldest daughter was in grade 4, I filled out the form and she didn't have to write it. And now my youngest is in grade 4, and suddenly there's all this pressure I don't understand. And then I told him what our position was that we agreed it was unnecessary. And he said, well, I'm just going to tell her to go in and write her name on the test and just sit and read a book.
I mean, which is the only option at times, and definitely defeats the purpose. These tests have been going on for years, so why are teacher associations, really raising the alarm now?
Well, the BCTF has had a long campaign against the FSAs for a very long time. For us, for our district right now, Amy, we have multiple issues. And if the system, so I'm thinking the education system as a whole, can afford to take 6 to 8 hours out of instructional time in order to do a test that is not going to be reflected on a child's report card, that is not going to directly benefit the child who is writing it, we are saying that that's a waste of time and resources when we have so many pressing needs. We've got kids without classrooms. We've got not enough resources for the kids that are in classrooms. We have our working conditions are such that we constantly field distress calls. Last year was particularly bad. And so we were not surprised that at the end of the year, the data shows that 336 teachers left the district, resigned from the district. Now, this is at a time when you've got a shortage of professional qualified educators. So what that we think should, get some attention rather than a test that is of no direct benefit to the students or the teachers in classrooms today.
And and teachers and students alike, I would think over the past few years with the pandemic and all of these working from homes, things have really changed. But the province has long maintained that these tests help identify students who need extra support, and by funding those districts, how has that been? Is that the case? Has that been seen so far?
Amy, I would love to see the data where they show this. What I have in my mind, and it's kind of seared in my mind, is a kind of a graph that shows a downward trend in funding since the time the BC was first in government. The funding is dramatically different. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but I think it was 3.3% when they were first in government last in government in 2001. And then it's down to 1.7% of the GDP now. I would send that to you later. I don't have it with me right now, but the funding has been decreasing for as long as we have had FSAs. Okay. Funding has been decreasing. So I would love to see the connection between getting more supports in schools and FSAs, because we don't see it. What we see is just an absolute lack of resources for the most needy students in our schools. Students that need the most supports. We have violence and acting out. Kids, they speak in behavior. Their behavior speaks. And so they're violently acting out in classrooms. We know that that's a distress call. That's saying, I really need help. There's nobody here coming to help me. And we have to say, no, there isn't any.
Right. And obviously those cries for help through behavior,
Mhm.
those can't be
Yeah,
measured on a test. So
exactly.
there's no proof for it. I would love to get some calls if you're a parent who has either let your children go through with the standardized tests or if you're hoping that they can miss out. We would love to hear from you. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, we've always been told parents can opt out of the test, Lizanne. What are you hearing from them this year? Is it a difficult process? Is this something they just need to send a note for?
Yeah, so we were really disturbed by the two instances in particular. I mean, last weekend we heard that there was a school where after the parents had signed the withdrawal form, the children were called into an office one by one, and a vice principal and a principal spoke to the child about their parents signing with the withdrawal form. You can imagine how distressful the child uh, experienced that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure. We also heard just yesterday, actually, one of our members who's also a parent called us in distress. She said she had been threatened with an investigation if she completed the form for a child and insisted that her child not write the test. Now, teachers, of course, are bound by professional standards of BC educators from the BC College of Teachers. We've got a code of ethics. We've got lots of standards that we have to uphold. Forcing a child to write a standardized test is not on those obligations that we have as professional educators.
And you said that she was told she could be investigated, by whom or for what? If I could just get some clarification.
So when teachers, when teachers violate the code of ethics or they violate the professional standards, then they get investigated for their behavior.
Okay.
That's a lot of what we do at the union. We represent teachers. And so to threaten her with an investigation because she wanted to ensure that her child not be subjected to the stress of a standardized test, we think is a bit over the top.
Especially in light of to my understanding, with children that have both gone through these elementary school choices, they've always said that this is completely optional.
Yes.
They've never mentioned the pressure. Aside from that impact on the students, how are the teachers feeling about this? What sort of an impact are the tests having on teachers?
So these tests are coming. First of all, October is Learning Disability Month. So we find that extremely ironic that you would subject children to, the kind of testing that was more common 20, 40, 60 years ago. At the same month, not only is it Learning Disability Month, where you've got to be cognizant of different ways that people learn, but they also are rolling out a new way of assessing children. It's called the new reporting order. And in this reporting order, teachers have to give what's called descriptive feedback. So you can't just say from K to 9, you can say at A or B or C. You have to actually describe and give some detail on how the child has progressed. So students right now are used to, because teachers have been shifting, this has been rolling out slowly for the past few years. It has been optional for a couple of years, but this year you have to do it. So they're getting used to this descriptive feedback, this dialogue that they can have with teachers over the assessment. And it's like a dialogue on this is what we're learning together. And in the middle of that, they are now faced with the standardized test that many of them might not even be familiar with. They might never have seen it because their teacher might have been using this descriptive feedback for a while, or they might have been in classes in the past where that was what they were doing. And now they have this the standardized test, and it's being done online sometimes in schools that have outdated technology. So the stresses for teachers are that they go down and they take them perhaps to the computer lab, or half the computers are not working. Kids have forgotten and that's 6 to 8 hours. Teachers would love to have that time to have in-service training, to do other things with that precious, time.
It's like it is a considerable chunk of time. We do have a call now from Christy in Prince George. Christy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And what are your thoughts on the standardized tests?
Well, I don't believe that standardized tests are necessarily applicable to all students. If you want to look at the 80-20 rule or the bell curve of life, I do believe that they are necessary for children, in that they're a way for the ministry to understand how effective educators and ultimately school districts are in being able to deliver the curriculum to students in a way that translates to retention. So it's almost like a report card for the educators and school districts themselves.
Okay.
And I think that's a necessary tool. We all go through it in life. I don't see why education systems should be treated differently.
All right. All fair points. Thank you, Christy. Lizam, how do you feel about that? That it's not so much something that we measure student performance by, but more school district performance by, to sort of make sure everybody's on an even playing field?
So teachers are obliged through the School Act to be regularly communicating to parents about how their child, the parent's child, of course, and the teacher's student is doing. Teachers have a plethora of ways of communicating that. Mm-hmm. And if there was a request by the ministry to find out, what is happening in a particular school in a particular district, there are other ways to do that. There is just mountains and mountains of research to show how ineffective standardized tests are in actually gauging how a student is doing. I have tons of stories. I'll just tell you a quick one. Okay. I once had a student who was most brilliant child, just absolutely just brilliant. And on the day of the test, had an utter meltdown, could not do the test, was having a panic attack. And so what was on that test that day was absolutely not a reflection of how they did.
Right.
If students it's a snapshot of a particular minute in a particular time in a child's life. What if that morning they didn't have breakfast? What if last night their parents were fighting all night? Then you take this tiny little fragment of a time of the entire learning journey, and then you make assumptions about that. Whereas if you'd ask the teacher, if I had been asked, how is this child? I could give you a paragraph on how that child is doing if I was asked. And the whole idea of looking at the system as a whole, this data is used most effectively right now. That the way you can visibly see how it's used is the way it's used to sell real estate. So the data is taken and used by the Fraser Institute to rank schools. That ranking of schools is used in whenever you see real estate ads for homes. If you're in a school catchment area, it shows the ranking for the schools in that area as one of the selling points. And I've heard from young people say that they remember when their parents read this ranking and then suddenly the whole family was uprooted and moved to a different catchment area because, the school that they were at was ranked low, and they tell me how bad they felt. How is this healthy or good for our students to go through, for our children to go through? It just makes no sense.
But I suppose some would argue that we do need to make sure students are, living up to their potential. How, quickly, how can we sort of keep track of that if we're not doing these standardized tests? Is it just from teachers giving feedback? Is it a more sort of, emotional and intellectual IQ that we're looking at? How can we sort of measure students' progress?
I think the European countries in particular have lots and lots of examples. They've gone down this road before, and they've found much more effective ways of getting the temperature of what's happening in a system, how to improve a system, and how to make sure that, to check in on how kids are doing. But it is quite ironic and quite hypocritical, I think, to look at a system that is so dramatically underfunded and then to test that system in the ways that it's being tested now, in absence, as though it's happening in a vacuum, as though, schools in the north of Surrey, the scores in schools in the north of Surrey are dramatically lower than schools in the south of Surrey. So there's a socioeconomic disparity in Surrey. You cannot look at those scores in a vacuum. There's a whole bunch of other factors that go. And I know when Finland reorganized their school system, they made sure that they were looking at, to improve their system, they were looking at the entire environment of the of where the child was coming from, and made sure that they were, ensuring that kids had everything that they needed in order to learn. Okay. We learned during the pandemic that, kids come to school for food. How are we allowing that to happen in a country and in a province that's so rich?
True. And we'll have to leave it there for today. Lizanne, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us.
You're welcome, Amy.
Take care. Lizanne Foster is the first vice president of the Surrey's Teacher Association. And of course, it's time to get your questions ready for our gardening columnist, Brian Minter. He'll be here to take your calls and emails right after the CBC News with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Solicitor General Mike Farnworth says Surrey's latest challenge to the police transition will cost taxpayers more money. As we've been hearing on the show, the city is going to court in another attempt to keep the RCMP. Mayor Brenda Locke says she was elected to stop the transition. 6 current and former female municipal police officers have launched a proposed class action lawsuit against BC's municipal police services. The 25-page suit alleges gender-based discrimination, harassment, and bullying by other officers and management. All 13 municipal police forces in the province were named. And police across BC say they are stepping up security after a former Hamas leader called for protests across the world today. The RCMP says it is aware of threats on social media directed at Canada's Jewish community. Vancouver police say there has not been a specific threat, but its operations center has been activated. And now the forecast on the north coast, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with a high of 15, highs reaching 12 and mainly sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, sunny with a high of 14 degrees, highs to 14 as well with a mix of sun and cloud in the West Kootenay, cloudy in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, some sun and cloud with a high of 17. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs up to 21 inland. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Amy with BC Today.
Thank you, Rob, and welcome back. And thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. We've been asking you all week to submit your favorite autumn color photos, and we'll be announcing the winner at the end of the show. But one color we don't see nearly enough of in our fall foliage is the color red. So what should we be planting to see that fiery shade in the coming years? As always, you can call in or email with your questions for Brian Minter. Call us at 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, 604-669-3733. And buy, sell, star or pound 690. Email bctoday@cbc.ca. And Brian Minter joins me now from Minter Country Garden in Chilliwack. Hi, Brian.
Amy, hi. What a great day out there.
Gorgeous.
What a great day to enjoy some incredible color across the province.
Yeah,
right now.
but you are looking for one color in particular.
I am. And Roy Forrester used to be one of the, first curator of Van Dusen Gardens. I got to know him fairly well. And he always complained that we don't have enough red in our autumn color scheme. And he's so right. And because of that, you look at the Parks Department's all through Lower Mainland in particular, they're good. If you go for a drive right now, you see the red starting to come out. And it is just so magnificent. You look at the mountains, there's a lot of yellow as leaves start to turn, but we don't have the brilliant East Coast reds. And whatever we can do to plant them. First of all, the important thing is to plant a tree. We don't care what one you plant. All the benefits that trees to our environment and birds and wildlife and us are amazing. But the point is, if we had some choices, I'm sitting here right now looking out in the parking lot here at this beautiful autumn sunset at Maple, just a full stunning red in the sunshine. And it lifts our spirits. It really does. And it's always something to look forward to. When people are planting trees in their garden, that's one of the questions they ask. Okay, what am I going to get for autumn color? And it lasts not a few days. It lasts for 3-4 weeks, depending on where you live and the type of fall we have. It's so brilliant. And leading the pack would be, of course, the maples. The beautiful, our Canadian flag is the sugar maple, which is great, but also the Acer rubrums, and rubrums mean red. And the difference today is we normally have the larger trees, like we just talked about, the red sunset here right now, and autumn flame, and all those different varieties.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more columnar forms today because we don't have room with higher density living today. The smaller, more columnar trees are very, very nice. And I love, they're not pure red, but they're getting there. I love Armstrong, I love Bowhall, and I love Carpick, maples that have that beautiful red. And so there's a whole series of them. And if you don't have room for the taller trees, because Amy, they'll get up into the 30-foot range, good shade trees, but maybe a little bit too big for your yard.
Of course.
The Japanese maples are absolutely great. A couple I'd like to point out, by the way, the columnar red maple, it's called Twombly's Sentinel. Is a beautiful red, but a more narrow form to fit in anywhere. And I would say probably one of the very best is a green maple. And the green maples, of course, have the most brilliant fall colors, is the paling bark maple, Acer griseum. That's a fabulous variety. When it turns red, it is shocking red, which is really great. So the Japanese maples are great. There's one other family, too, that I wanted to pick on a wee bit here. The Paratia. It's from the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
and they're planted more and more right now. Very clean tree. Actually, ironically, has tiny red flowers in December, January. But the red color right now is absolutely stunning. So you've got lots of choices. Oh, got to throw in the oxydendron, a sourwood tree.
Okay.
Stunning red right now, which is great. And then just to add color in your garden, don't forget, we have so many flowering shrubs right now. The burning bush, of course, the Euonymus alata. The Chinese witch hazel, so with the red fall coloring, oak leaf hydrangeas. We have so many Anietias and plethras. So there's lots of selections out there to add a brilliant bit of red to your garden. To go with all the other colors, we're missing the red. And Amy, there's some good choices.
I think it all sounds wonderful. And yes, bring in more red. It's just always so gorgeous to see. There's a street near where I grew up, and for a few weeks, there's just a canopy across the road of red, and people come see it. It's incredible. It's so special. But let's get some calls now. Of course, people can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. And we already have a few people on the line. We'll start with Stevie in Kelowna. Hi, Stevie.
Hey, thanks. Speaking of red, I got a raspberry question.
Okay.
Brian. Okay, I don't know the variety, everbearing. The springtime comes, they flower, they bud out, whatever you want to say, and the fruit is so weak and weird looking, and basically I'm ready to give up. And then the next crop comes later in the summer, and it's full, and it's tons of fruit. I just don't understand why that first crop is so weird and so weak.
Okay, a couple of questions. Do you know what variety you have of the everbearing raspberry?
I don't. I'm sorry,
okay.
I don't.
If you have a chance and you're wandering around to garden stores in the spring, try one that is autumn. It's a really good variety. Okay, it'll come to me in just half a second here. But try the varieties make a difference in terms of what will make a difference. The other thing is, what are you feeding them, first of all?
Okay, well, that's a really good, awesome question, and nothing. I haven't done anything.
Okay.
So,
no, that's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you could try and give them, made in British Columbia, a vegetable fertilizer called 10-15-19, a vegetable and flour. It has the micronutrients in it. And, sometimes, and what I would do is put that on as soon as leaves start to form in the spring. And that nutrient will make a difference for you, because sometimes it has the micronutrients, which are so good, because sometimes one little thing missing can make a difference. I would certainly try that one. It is great to get on, and that I know will make a difference. And the other thing is, just one dumb question here. When do you prune the raspberries, and how do you prune your everbearing raspberries?
Okay, I prune in the off season, in the winter, like late winter, early spring, and
to the ground, right? Prune them right to the ground.
Oh no, I don't do that. I don't prune them right to the ground.
Okay, that's what you do with the ever-bearing raspberries, because they come up, they bloom a little bit later, produce later. I think that will help you as well. So anytime I find when the leaves start to go, cut them off right at the ground. I give that type of feed we talked about in the spring. That'll make all the difference in the world. And I think next year we should have much better luck.
All
Thanks,
right.
buddy. Thanks, pal.
All right,
Thank you.
Stevie.
Okay,
here's
take
to a bumper crop next year. We'll move on to Joni in Langley. Hi, Joni. I think you've got a question about moving your perennials.
Yes.
Okay.
We have the right. We sold our home and we're able to move anything we want off of the property, which is great because I have a lot of perennials. The place that I am moving to doesn't really have much of a garden, so I'll be working with a landscaper to figure out where to put things. Okay. Meanwhile, I need to get these things off the property and moved over there. So my plan was to dig out pieces of, like I have iris and bee balm and Rebecca and various and hostas, things like that, and put them in pots. And then I was going to transport them over and put them in one area on the south side of the house, right up against the house, and then find all the leaves and stuff I can to sort of snuggle around them, and also put some cattle panels around to keep those voracious deer out. And that was my plan. Any holes in this plan, or is there any other advice that Brian can give me?
Yeah, and a couple of things. And I'm glad you're doing that. That's wonderful. Use about a 2 or 3 gallon container. That would be a bigger size, but more conducive to, and make sure when you do dig them up that the soil is moist first. If the soil is not moist, you need to water it first. That's absolutely crucial. And then just don't kind of lift them out. Make a complete circle around with a good sharp shovel that you can actually get a root ball there and lift the whole root ball and put it in. Size it up to the size of the pot. It's going to be easier for them to do that. If they're herbaceous perennials, ones that die down in the wintertime, and even though it's not time for some of them, let's cut them back anyway, especially the iris. They can be cut back now with no problem whatsoever. And and again, just copy whatever, like the iris, of course, want to have the rhizomes above ground. That's very important. But no, it's a good plan, a good time to do it anytime right now. The only difference is I would maybe get a bale of really good soil. So in other words, when you lift them up, instead of, if you're losing a bit of the root system, you've got the soil there to add to it to make sure that they're going to take off and do really well. So that's a great idea. I love what you're doing.
Put them in good soil. Like I have a vegetable plot with excellent soil in it. Put some of that underneath.
I would rather not take your garden soil. I'd rather take something like the Pro Mix or Sunshine Mix, a bale of that, and work it in. I think it would be better for the plants. Because remember, going in containers right now, and that would be a lot better for you if you don't mind.
So what did you call the soil? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the standard. We have a couple of Canadian companies. Pro Mix is one that they sell, and the Sunshine. Get a bale of soil. It's probably less expensive for you to get a bale, but it's professional mix, and you can use it over and over again. But you've got enough to be able to not only use now to put them in pots, but enough to have when you do find a spot for them to add into your soil in the spring.
All right, Joni.
And may I ask one more?
Just a quick one.
This question is about Japanese maple trees. What are my chances of moving one that is probably about 6 feet wide and maybe about 4 or 5 feet high? If I was buying this in a store, it'd probably cost me about $5,000 or $6,000. This is a stunning piece.
If we can get, here's a couple of things. When you get into that size, you do as close as you can to getting the leaves falling off. They need to be dormant before you move them, but they're getting close to that. Once the leaves start turning color, they're close to that dormant season. Tie the maple up first of all, so you're not breaking branches when you go on. So tie it up so you can actually get in there. And if it's depending on the size of the trunk, you're going to have to go out at least 18 inches, probably 2 feet in radius all the way around, and to dig away the soil to create a nice root ball that you could lift. Now, a tree like that's going to be 500, 600 pounds. So you're going to have a little bit of help. And of course, have burlap sacking to put around it ready to hold that root system together. That's really the key, is getting a good root system. So if you can do that, you can be okay, but it's going to be heavy. So keep that one in mind.
All right, good luck, Joni. It sounds like you've got a lot of moving to do. Brian Gwyneth wrote in and she says, I am wondering if my hydrangeas are too old and need to be replaced. This summer, one of my hydrangea bushes didn't bloom. The hydrangea bush right next to it didn't bloom this year or last year.
Yeah, and you know what? If we're assuming we're talking the mophead hydrangeas right now, and she brings up a very good point. Pruning is the enemy. As of mid or late July, you cannot prune those hydrangeas. Anytime that you want to get them cleaned up from mid-July till they bloom next spring, you're cutting off the blooms. Okay. And I think that's the only reason they're not blooming. It's not a question of being old; they'll last for years and years. But watch your pruning now. For all the listeners, if you want to tidy and clean up for winter, don't touch the hydrangeas until they bloom or begin to bloom next spring.
Okay, good to know. And we'll go to a call now from Keith in Vancouver. Hi, Keith. Thanks for calling in.
Hello, thank you. I have two quick questions. Okay. I have a ground turkey fig that I have espaliate, and it is currently loaded with green fruits. I did manage to get 2 ripe ones yesterday, but I don't expect that I'm going to get others. Should I pick the fruits off as winter comes on?
I chuckle I really laugh quite out loud because I love our Italian community in Vancouver, and they're passionate about their figs. Yes. So when I used to come into the studio every Thursday in CBC, I have to go by First Avenue, and I get the Italian section. There's plastic everywhere on either side of the road. What are they doing? Covering the figs to make sure that they're ripe earlier. So let's learn from them. So if you can get some plastic covering over top, keep it warmer in there to try and get those figs ripening as much as you can. We've got some time. They will ripen for another at least 4 weeks. So let's give that. And then you are right, though. Once they are finished and we're getting the season, do pick all the figs off, all the green figs off, because that'll delay some of the fruiting for next year. So very, very good question.
All right, Keith, you had another quick question?
Yes, another quick question. Will next year's fruiting buds come on this year's growth, and does it come on older?
It'll come on. Yeah, they mostly come on newer growth. I always point out to people, and we're looking at figs to buy in the spring, that some of them have little tiny figs on them already as they're starting to come along. So they produce on new wood and old wood both, Keith.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thank you.
Dave in Quesnel, you have a question as well.
Thanks for the program. Brian, I'm wondering what the best way is to prepare a lawn up in this area for winter.
And that really good question. And we need to talk more about lawns and the importance of lawns and so on. But don't forget, up in Grand Prairie is where they grow a lot of the grass seed, certainly a lot of the festive grass seed. So that means their grass is extremely hardy. We don't have to worry too much about that. I think it's, in my opinion, now we're getting into mid-October. It is getting too late to feed it anymore. And at this point here, so no more feed. And even though you want to use a high phosphorus and potash, no. Just simply mow it as low as you possibly can right now. That's the best thing to do. Grass is more vigorous when you do that. So coming straight out of the ground, don't let it lay down. That one last mowing or 2 mowings are absolutely critical. But no, just basically all you have to do, we've passed the fertilization period for fall now. Just make sure it's mowed properly and low, and you should be absolutely fine. It's incredibly hardy and tough.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you for calling in, Dave. I'm not quite ready to talk about snow on my lawn yet, but I know we do have to plan ahead. We'll take a call now from Jillian in Port Alberni. Hi, Jillian.
Hello, and hi, Brian. I have a question about my gooseberries, but first I'm surprised you didn't mention the staghorn sumac for fall color.
Yes,
and my blueberry bushes do well too, but the staghorn is fabulous.
It is, and there's a new staghorn that came out about 10 years ago now, called Tiger Eyes, and it's yellow instead of being green, and its red fall color is absolutely breathtaking. So good catch, Julian. That's good. Thank you.
And they're easy to control because the roots are shallow.
They are. Well, staghorn is non-aggressive too.
Yeah.
The Tiger Eyes. Yeah.
My gooseberry bushes. What can I do to promote the health of the bush? Because It was in a sunny spot. Then the neighbors planted a cedar hedge. And over the years, the hedge is now 8 feet tall instead of 1 foot tall. So I moved the bush to full sun, new location last year, but it's still spindly and straggly, and the leaves are miniature, and it's producing tiny amounts of fruit.
Okay. And it really is in good soil. Julian, when you moved it, you had good soil for it?
I put in compost and sand in the pit.
Okay. I think we need to add some other material. I think you need basically try mushroom compost or so we need some manures in there. I would put that on now at this time of year. I think we're lacking that. And also, we talked earlier about feeding the vegetable, flower, and veg 10, 15, 19 with the micronutrients is the best feed you can give that. And I think that's really what's missing right now. And and thanks for moving it. Brilliant move. We just need to fix the soil, and we need to get some feed on it, and it will come back for you just fine. So feed it in the spring though, when the leaves start coming out. But fix the soil, amend the soil right now if you possibly can, Julian.
To put the mushroom manure on now, and then
I sure would work it into the soil a wee bit. Get those organics going in there. Okay, and by the way, real quick one here. If you want a super gooseberry, the Finnish ones from Finland, the Hinnanmäki, I think are the best gooseberries going. They come in a yellow and a red, but Hinnanmäki, in the future, if you're looking for other ones, grab those.
All right, Jillian, thanks for calling. And of course, there is still a bit of time for Brian to answer your gardening questions. You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, locally at 604-669-3733. And still, email us if you want, bctoday@cbc.ca. We do have an email, Brian, from Margaret, and she writes, I'm looking to grow my first crop of garlic. I have a couple of questions in terms of where to plant. Does it matter what crop was in the ground before I put the garlic in? What materials should I put in the soil before I plant? And how deep should I plant it?
Excellent question. Number one, I think it's very adaptable to no matter which crop you had in. But the absolute secret, have raised beds for garlic. Our neighbors who grow it commercially have their beds raised up 2.5 feet. They have a tractor that keeps it up. They do so much better. So raised beds, absolutely number one. Whatever the rule with the little cloves is, whatever the width in our area, certainly here, 3 times the depth. And I always hold my fingers out from my thumb to the end of my forefinger. Put them that far apart. So, again, 2 or 3 inches deep, they'll be absolutely fine. They're going to start coming up early. Mushroom compost. I interviewed one of our northern garlic growers a few years back when I did an article on garlic, and he swore by mushroom compost as being absolutely one of the best things you could possibly put in the soil. So now we've got raised beds. We've got mushroom compost added in. We know how deep to plant it, how to apply for it. And I'm so pleased that we're doing this because everyone grows garlic beautifully in our province, and it sounds like a good year to grow it. So that's good to hear.
All right, all good advice. And we have time for one last call from Brandon, just quickly. Brandon, you have a question about potato harvest, I believe.
Yeah, so this year, pulling my potatoes out of the ground, they've got hundreds of little pinholes in the surface, maybe in the first 1/8 inch or so into the flesh, and there's hard little nodules inside the flesh as well. Sometimes I'm just wondering what might be causing that.
Yeah, my first thought immediately when I hear that is flea beetles. They have always been a nuisance for potatoes, and so that's the thing. And if you're growing commercially, I'm sure they have a control on it. 7 has been taken off the market, which was fairly mild, but it's been taken off the market. If we have that, and once you see holes in the foliage, you know immediately that you need to be able to find that. So you'll have to, commercially, I'm sure you'll be able to find something for the amount you're growing, but it does sound like a flea beetle problem.
Okay. I'll look into that.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. And just super quick, we've got one final email. We have an infestation of white fly throughout our south-facing backyard. They're on the vegetables, flowers, and lawn. We've tried several sprays without success. Quickly, Brian, while we've got the time, what can Rick do with these white fly?
It's a tough one. There isn't really a spray that'll control whitefly on the domestic market. But the secret is this. And get rid of the foliage. Maybe, instead of composting everything, you're going to compost it, put it deep in the compost. And the leaves are full of whitefly on so many different plants right now. Tomatoes are a bad one, right? Cucumbers are really bad as well. But the secret is to get big strips, maybe 6 inches across, if you like, of sticky yellow tape. It is an absolute magnet for whiteflies. So if you can get that up and around, a lot of greenhouses use it for organic control. It's really good. So sticky yellow tape is magic in terms of getting control, especially early in the season, of the whitefly. Works like a charm.
Interesting. So it's sort of like, is that like the fly paper that you'll see hanging down
It
in
is,
greenhouses?
but it's bright yellow. And the funny thing is, a lot of greenhouses always put the yellow tape up to see if there, any indications of whitefly. And I notice a lot of them are putting massive amounts in their greenhouses because it's the best control they could get. It really works very well.
All right. And any quick tips for getting your garden ready for the cold and the rain that we are probably going to have this weekend?
Well, as we're looking, it's regenerative gardening right now, and regenerative agriculture. And get your cover crops as soon as you possibly can on all your soils. Do not leave your soil bare, and put lots of organic matter in now, not in the spring. So your soil is more open and porous, and get those cover crops on, because regenerative gardening is the way to bring your soil back to its absolutely ultimate state. So thank you for the question. That's a good one. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Brian, for always giving us such good tips and your expertise. And thank you to everybody that called in and emailed, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. Enjoy the sunshine while you can, Brian. BC Today gardening columnist, Brian Minter. And we have had such amazing submissions to our Fall Photos contest this week. Barbara sent us some beautiful pictures of a garden in Black Creek with fall leaves and fall colors. Josie sent us a freshly planted field in Chilliwack after the fall harvest. But sadly, there can only be one winner. Congratulations, Amanda Halgrud. Amanda captured the fall trees and colors near the ski hill in Fernie, and it is just a beautiful photo. You win a BC Today prize pack, and we will let you know how to collect your prize. I want to thank everybody who emailed and entered. You can take a look at the photos on our BC Today live stream on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and our CBC Vancouver YouTube page. They are breathtaking, so make sure you get a look at them all. And that is our show for today. My thanks to everyone who joined our discussions, and a special thanks to everyone on the BC Today team. As always, Greg Kisser, Mark Fairfield, Mel Carter, Alan Regan, Rachel Adams, Melody Jacobson, and George Baker. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott. Thank you for listening and watching, and enjoy your weekend, even the rain. Take care.